Okay, so today in your lesson, you're going to look at 4 different representations of how to recognize slope and calculate slope. So I was just going to give an example of each of those, especially since we've been out for a few days. So the first one, actually the first thing we need to remember is the ratio for finding slope is always your change of y divided by your change of x. So we always have to remember that ratio because that is always what slope is. It does not change. So when we think about looking at that in a table, well, on a graph we have been able to choose any 2 points on a line and then make a triangle and determine what our slope is from there. It's the same on a table, it's just we're looking at data points listed rather than data points on a graph. So I can take any 2 points here in this table and find their growth and set it up in the ratio to find their slope. So for instance, if I wanted to use 5 and 12 and 9 and 22 as my 2 points, I'm going to think about, well, what do I have to do to 12 to get to 22? Well, I had to add 10. So that's my growth for my y, and then I'm going to look at my 5 and my 9. Well, what do I have to do to 5 to get to 9? Well, I had to add 4. So then I'm going to put that into my ratio. Well, my change in y was 10, and my change in x was 4. Then I want to simplify that. So I'm going to divide both by 2, and so I get a ratio of 5/2. Now that's my slope for this particular table. Okay, or if it was a graph, that's what it would be. Do not change that to a decimal because it's so much easier to graph 5 up and 2 over than it is to graph 2.5. So that's why we keep those in an improper fraction form. The next representation you'll see today is a graph. This isn't anything new. This is what we practiced on last week in the beginning, or on Monday also. You just locate 2 points on the line where there's an intersection between grid marks. Well, and I'm just using line paper, so it's a little difficult to tell. So we're going to make one here. Okay, so then you make your growth triangle. Makes you really thankful for graph paper, huh? And we're going to think about, well, I'm going to think about, we're going to act like this line actually goes up here through 4, so I'm going to make this dot really big. Okay, so my coordinates here are 0, 1, and then I have a coordinate here of 4, 4. So that means my x went over 1, 2, 3, 4. So my change in x was 4, and my change in y is 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm going to put that into my ratio of my change in y over my change of x. So this is my y, and this is my x. So my slope in this case is going to be 3 over 4, or 3/4. The other representation that you will come into contact today with is using the slope-intercept form, which quite honestly is the easiest way to identify slope. So this was our linear pattern that we learned earlier back in chapter 4 or 5. I'm having a hard time remembering now. But if you remember right, each of these has a meeting. So our y was our output. The m is your slope, or your growth. Your x is your input, and the b is the y-intercept. Okay, so to identify slope in an equation, you just have to identify what number is taking the place of m in your equation. Well, it's this number right here. So that's why I said this is the easiest one of all. All you have to do is say is m equals 5/4. There's really no math involved in that. The other type of problem you'll see today will be a word problem, just setting up a ratio for that word problem and then simplifying. So hopefully this little video will give you some tips into being successful when finding Mr. Foley today.